Have you ever wondered how powerful a single hug can be? Not just the warmth of two arms wrapping around you, but the invisible strength it carries. The strength to break walls of loneliness. The strength to heal wounds no medicine could ever reach. The strength to save a life. This is the story of a young woman who was standing on the edge of despair. A woman who had lost everything she thought made her worthy of love. A woman who wanted to end it all, until a stranger's simple embrace became the reason she chose to live. Her name was Emily Grace. Emily was not a famous singer, not a writer, not someone the world would recognize on magazine covers or television screens. She was ordinary, just like you, just like me. She lived in a quiet town where the streets smelled of old rain and freshly baked bread from the corner bakery. She worked at a small library, a place where silence was louder than words and books were her only loyal companions. Emily was 26 years old, and yet, she often felt as though her life had aged decades beyond her years. Her eyes carried a sadness that no smile could fully hide. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, as if every word she spoke needed permission. From the outside, people thought she was doing fine. She had a stable job. She paid her bills. She went to church on Sundays, sitting quietly at the back pew where no one would notice her trembling hands. But inside, Emily was drowning. She had no parents. Her mother had passed away when she was just 12, and her father had left long before that. No siblings. No partner. Just an ocean of silence waiting for her every time she walked back into her tiny apartment. And the cruelest part, no one knew. She wore a mask so well that even her coworkers believed she was simply the shy girl who loved books. But deep down, Emily longed for something so simple, yet so rare. A hand to hold. A voice that said, "You're not alone." A hug that reminded her she was still human. But life has a way of testing the ones who already feel broken. And for Emily, the tests came like storm after storm, never giving her a moment to breathe. She would wake up every morning to the sound of her alarm. Not because she had the energy to live the day, but because she had no choice. The world does not stop for the lonely. She would drag herself out of bed, stare at her reflection in the mirror, and whisper, "Why am I even here?" Her eyes were tired, her smile forced, her soul invisible. At work, she walked past shelves filled with thousands of books, stories of love, of friendship, of families that held one another through every storm. But Emily had none of that. Every page she touched reminded her of the life she never had. Evenings were the hardest. Because when the world quieted down, when lights in the windows across her street turned warm and golden with families gathering for dinner, her own apartment remained dark, silent, cold. There was no one to ask her how her day was. No one to laugh at her silly mistakes. No one to notice when tears silently streamed down her face as she heated leftovers for one. Loneliness was not just an emptiness, it was a prison, and slowly day by day, Emily's hope began to fade. Her faith, something her mother had once given her, felt like a flickering candle in a storm. She prayed, yes, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the words she whispered. Her coworkers barely noticed when she stopped smiling. Her neighbors didn't know her name, and the people she passed on the street. They looked through her as if she didn't exist. That's when the darkness began to whisper dangerous thoughts. No one would notice if you were gone. No one would care? You are invisible. And at first, Emily shook her head, trying to silence the voice. But the more she was ignored, the louder it became. There came nights when she sat on the floor of her bedroom, her arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the bottle of pills on her nightstand. Her tears soaking into the carpet, her breathing heavy with pain. She wanted to stop existing, not because she hated life, but because she couldn't bear the weight of feeling unwanted anymore. Imagine that. A young woman, kind at heart, gentle in spirit, with so much life ahead of her, reduced to believing she was nothing more than a shadow in this world. And still, no one knew, no one saw, no one reached out. Until one day, a day that seemed so ordinary, and yet, it became the day that would change everything. You said yes, ChatGPT said it was a gray afternoon. The kind of day where the clouds hung low, and the world felt heavy. Emily had finished her shift at the library. Her body moved out of habit, locked the door, walk the quiet streets, hold her bag close. But inside, she was exhausted, not from work, from life itself. She walked past the park she usually avoided. Families were there, laughing, chasing, holding hands. Each smile was like a reminder of what she would never have. She felt her throat tighten, her chest heavy. And for a moment she thought, maybe tonight will be the night I end this pain. And then it happened. A little boy, no older than 6, ran toward her. He had messy blonde hair, dirt on his shoes, and eyes that carried the kind of innocence only children know. He stumbled as he ran, holding a small balloon that almost slipped from his fingers. Before Emily could step aside, he wrapped his tiny arms around her legs. A hug so sudden, so uninvited, and yet so desperately needed. Emily froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked down, confused, as the boy held her tightly, as if she were someone he loved, someone he trusted. And then he looked up at her. With the softest smile, he said, "You looked sad. Mommy says when people are sad, they need a hug." Her eyes widened, her lips trembled. No one in years, had held her like that. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. Her knees felt weak as she slowly crouched down to his level. The boy, unbothered by her tears, just hugged her again, tighter this time. In that fragile moment, something inside Emily broke. But it wasn't despair this time. It was the wall she had built around her heart. That tiny act, those small arms, reminded her of something she had almost forgotten. She was still human. She was still worthy of love. She was still seen. The boy's mother hurried over, apologizing, pulling him back gently. But before leaving, the boy waved and shouted, "Don't be sad! Jesus loves you." And just like that, Emily collapsed to her knees, sobbing into her hands. Not out of pain, but out of relief. Because in that hug, she found a reason to keep living. That night, Emily didn't reach for the bottle of pills. For the first time in years, she fell asleep not in despair, but in the memory of a child's arms wrapped around her. That hug had planted a seed of hope. Days turned into weeks. She started noticing small things she had ignored before. The laughter of children in the library, the sunlight breaking through dusty windows, the sound of birds outside her apartment. They weren't just noises anymore. They were reminders life still has beauty. Emily decided she couldn't keep this gift to herself. If a child could see her pain and remind her she was not invisible, then maybe she could do the same for others. She began volunteering at a local shelter. She listened to people's stories, their losses, their battles, their loneliness. And every time someone broke down in tears, she didn't offer empty words. She offered something more powerful, a hug. She held the broken, the forgotten, the ones who whispered the same words she once did. "Why am I even here?" And with each embrace, she told them, "You are not alone. You matter." Emily's life didn't suddenly become perfect. She still had scars, still had nights of struggle. But that one hug reminded her of the truth. Even the smallest act of kindness can rewrite a destiny. And she learned something profound. Sometimes, we don't need answers. Sometimes, we don't need solutions. Sometimes all we need is to be held. It wasn't wealth or fame that saved her life. It was a single hug.